Well, there was something post-credits.
What was it? I don't remember then.
I didn't even think to check.
It was the full performance of the Rogers musical song.
Yeah, no, I saw it.
Okay.
That is such a... Okay. I don't want to spoil the show, but you make that song much better than it really is.
Oh, yeah. It's totally awful, but it's great in its awfulness.
I guess. Okay. I mean, they're on Broadway. Like, you'd think it would have been really good.
I can.
No, I don't think the point. Yeah.
If the point is that it's a bad Broadway song, then I can celebrate that.
Cheesy. It's a cheesy Broadway song.
No, it's bad.
I think it's bad. Plus, it doesn't make sense.
Well, it can be cheesy and good.
The whole musical does have kind of a Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark vibe.
Like, yeah, the costumes don't look good.
No, it's very low budget.
Everything, yeah, which is weird because again, it's implied it's on Broadway.
I'm not sure about the plot of the song too. It feels like it's doing everything. Is it like a prelude kind of song? It just feels like. It's got a lot of different plot points kind of
I'm assuming it's the song to end Act 1.
Okay.
Would be my assumption. Because they also say they left halfway through, so
yeah, I guess it also depends on what it's covering. Like what is are they going from all of before the Endgame and Infinity War and Civil War? Is it the entire?
It's Rogers the musical, so you got to assume it's following, Steve Rogers.
Hey, welcome back to Even More Mashed Up. We are the pop culture podcast, where two professors talk about all things pop culture. I'm Alan.
And I'm Patrick, and today is a day that I have long been looking towards on the podcast, looking forward to on the podcast. Oh, I nailed that. Nailed that opening.
A lot of looking is happening.
I think you might be too excited, Patrick.
I'm so excited I can't even get the words out of my mouth. Yes. No. So today we are talking about the Disney Plus Hawkeye series.
See, I didn't think you'd be interested in this.
Long-time listeners would know is probably, I'm probably done at this point with the MCU because it's really hard to
yes, they have been building for a decade to this peak for you. Because nobody loves Hawkeye.
Yes.
This is peak superhero.
You love Hawkeye.
It's true. It's true. This is a show designed, especially for myself, for people like myself.
Yeah, for yourself, I would say. Would you say that Disney hit the bullseye?
Do you think there were a lot of people...
I missed that. What did you say, Alan?
Do you think Disney hit the bullseye?
Oh, yes. It was right on target. It was not wide of the mark.
Excellent. So, do you want to decide where we start today? Well, I don't know. I was just waiting to see if you had any more.
Okay, no. I'm sure I'll come up with more, as we go through. Well, I mean, where else would we start but with fun facts?
I suppose that's true. Your subscription or your new access needs to be utilized.
Oh, I don't have a lot of fun facts because there aren't really those kind of numbers on Disney Plus shows.
Really? They still don't have any numbers on those kind of shows?
Wait.
Really.
So
the only thing I've got is...
Did you just admit that fun facts are just disguised numbers?
Oh, I've admitted that several times in the past.
Okay.
It's possible you just don't listen to me.
What?
Nicely done, Rich.
Were you saying something?
See, Rich made the joke first, Alan, so now
That's because I'm being polite because we're doing this at a distance, and I pause and wait for other people.
Ah.
I have a fun fact for you.
Okay.
Did you check the Rotten Tomato numbers?
Those are all of my fun facts.
Oh, well then why don't I let you go ahead and do your fun facts?
Well, no, you can go ahead and do it, Alan. I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, well, there's not a lot of thunder left when I say, "Hey, Patrick, what do you think the scores are on Rotten Tomatoes?"
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm going to go with 92% with critics and 92% with audiences.
I'm going to go with 30% both.
Well, I will say that Patrick is actually dead on as of 1 week ago, which is the last time I thought about Hawkeye. Oh, it's a smash hit.
You'll be happy to know that those are dead on as of yesterday.
So they've not changed.
I.e. the last time Patrick has thought about Hawkeye.
Yeah. Do you have it where it falls in comparison to other Disney Plus shows, Alan?
I do not, but I do have a follow-up for you on that 92 from critics.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and follow it up.
What do you think is the critic score if you go with only the website's top critics?
Wait, say that again?
So what do you think the critic score is if you go only with the website's top critics? Because there's a little button you can click that gives you just the top critics, not all critics.
Oh, I didn't actually do that.
Well, you want to take a guess?
Sure, I'll go 100%.
Wow. Rich?
I'm going to go much lower at 80.
It was actually 60%.
Wow.
Yes, a substantial drop, which I can't explain or provide any insight into. But I did think that was kind of shocking and interesting.
Well, the top critics are clearly part of the media elite. And so they're probably kind of snobbish about Hawkeye and the Disney Plus and the MCU and things like that.
Right, unlike, English professors with fancy PhDs. Those kinds of down-to-earth kinds of people.
I'm not part of the media elite. I may be a different kind of elite, but not
part of the academic
media elite.
Understood, yes. You only have your own podcast.
Well, I don't have my own podcast. I have a podcast that I share with several other people.
So that's the bar.
He shares with us. He allows us to be part of it.
So that's the bar for you? Like, you would be a media elite if you were a single host. But because you share it, you're not part of the media elite.
No, I was just correcting you in terms of calling it I have my podcast. I don't have my podcast. It is our podcast.
All right, fair enough. Do you have more fun facts?
I do.
Okay.
Do you want to guess where does Hawkeye, based on the first number, the 92%?
Yes.
Do you want to guess where it falls in relationship to the other Disney Plus MCU shows? So WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki, and What If?
But see now, to me, What If would be at the bottom, but I think it did better. It's not as good as WandaVision. I would say it falls in line
Loki,
with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like whatever, like it's about right there.
You would be incorrect.
Really?
Yes.
So I'm going to say it's actually going to be higher than all of them.
No, that's impossible.
Then you would also be incorrect.
Oh, thank God.
All right, so is WandaVision the favorite?
No.
So What If is the favorite?
Correct. What If currently shows a 94 with critics and 95 with audiences.
Okay, that's just garbage. It just goes to show you that your fun facts...
It is ridiculously high, yes.
Your fun facts are neither fun nor facts.
Well, no, it's a fact that is what they post. Whether it's true or not is different. So that's the number one. Do you want to guess what number two is?
I feel like Hawkeye's got to be number two because there can't be many between 94 and 92.
Yes,
I would say Loki.
Hawkeye is number two.
And then WandaVision and then Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Incorrect.
So they have them exactly backwards then.
It goes What If, then Hawkeye, then Loki, because Loki is a 92-91 split.
I forgot about Loki, yeah.
Yeah, you get Loki, and then you get WandaVision, which is 91-88, and then you get Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is 89-85.
But boy, that's really splitting hairs until you get to that last one.
It is. Yeah. It is very splitting hairs. Personally, I would put Hawkeye second behind WandaVision.
If I were going to rank them, I think I would put Hawkeye third behind WandaVision and Loki. But I think you could make an argument between Hawkeye and Loki.
Yeah, for me, the issue with Loki is that it doesn't really gel as the show it should be until the final couple of episodes.
I think that's fair.
Whereas Hawkeye, I would say
yes.
Hawkeye is probably the most narratively consistent of all of the shows. But that's why I would just put it a nudge above Loki.
Yeah, I would say the problem with Hawkeye...
There is no problem with Hawkeye.
Is Hawkeye.
There were a number.
Yeah, Hawkeye is the problem
which one?
with Hawkeye.
Because there's multiple Hawkeyes.
Patrick, I would say that the narrative was, how do you describe it? The most consistent. But I'm not sure it was the most interesting.
Much like a plateau. There were no highs, but yes, maybe there weren't any lows.
I think Rich is kind of... Oh, I'm going to say it. I have to say it. I think Rich is kind of right on that one. I think the highs of Loki just carry it past Hawkeye, which was, very consistent, like he plodded right along, and he just started plodding and he kept plodding. At the end, he plodded right through the finish line.
See, I thought you would like it because I think the reason that it is consistent is it's not really trying to set up like the next big thing in the way that both WandaVision and Loki are sort of clearly setting up the multiverse. Hawkeye is just sort of telling its own little story in its own little corner of the MCU as opposed to having to serve something else. And that's another reason why I think it's more effective in that it's not really doing any heavy lifting for, the MCU in general. Yeah, we're going to get the Echo series spun out of it. Yeah, I assume we're going to see Kingpin again, but there's, Hawkeye's storyline doesn't break down because it's trying to set up other things.
I think that's probably true. And that I love a standalone kind of vehicle, but But I still feel as if, to me, it felt kind of Netflix light a little bit sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That it was like there were moments where it felt like it was kind of doing a Daredevil kind of thing. And I don't think just because the Kingpin was in there, but the Netflix stuff is just done on kind of a darker, grittier level. And it obviously couldn't accomplish that. And so to me, this felt the most of the Disney Plus stuff like something that would have been done on Netflix back in the day.
I can see that. Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, yeah, it's about as close to the gritty darkness of Netflix that you're likely to get in an MCU.
Yeah,
without
the
anybody
heroes
actually dying, sort of.
And the heroes being so human was very Netflixian too. But if we kind of turn towards the show itself, it also seemed true to me of Kingpin. That it was great to see Kingpin come back, but in the end, Kingpin felt less substantive to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think, number one, I kind of wish they had brought Kingpin in like an episode earlier. Because
he didn't have a lot of screen time to do much.
Well, and the other thing, too, is within the episode he appears, we also see him defeated. And so we never get to see, like, the Kingpin that Hawkeye is clearly trying to avoid, the Kingpin that is meant to be feared. It would have been nice if we had gotten him in like an episode earlier and could have seen him doing something that shows him to be the same kind of menace, or the same sort of powerful figure that he was in Netflix. Because in this one, like, we get him and then we see him sort of defeated twice, but first by Kate and then by Echo. And it does, yeah, I mean, for me, I enjoyed the Kingpin reference, and appearance, but it did feel like it didn't have quite the room it could have used in terms of, he felt a little bit watered down.
Yeah, and so, Patrick, that's exactly where my notes go next. I think it was partly a function of the fact that the Netflix series, like we always complained about how they were always an episode too long, but that length gave them a lot of time to kind of slowly unpack the character. and make the character more human. And so here it just felt to me, especially like in comparison to Daredevil, because it's the same Kingpin. He seems to move to get his own hands dirty much quicker than he would have in the Netflix series. Like, is Eleanor really important enough for him to like jump in right away and put himself on the line? It just didn't feel authentic to the character as created previously.
Yeah, well, I think part of that, too, is I read an interview with D'Onofrio where he kind of talked about his take on the character. And one of the things he mentioned is that this version of Kingpin is a Kingpin who basically lost everything because of the blip and is in the process of having to rebuild sort of his empire.
And that sounds kind of neat. I wish we'd seen some of that.
And that's the problem, is we don't really see that in the show. Like, D'Onofrio, I don't know if that's just kind of D'Onofrio's kind of headcanon for how he was performing the character, or if that's kind of the official, like, biography of the character. But I think, if they had gotten more of that into the show, it would have explained kind of the Kingpin that we're seeing, that, not even Eleanor, he's the leader of the tracksuit mafia, which are probably even less of a force to be reckoned with than Eleanor.
But see, I kind of assumed, not being in his headspace, that, the Kingpin always oversaw the tracksuit mafia. Like, they were always like small, unimportant underlings in his undertaking. So when he first shows up on screen,
one of the many branches.
Yeah, he has like a conversation with Eleanor where she talks about wanting to get out of the business that felt very authentic to how he would do business. And then
apparently there was a deleted
moved differently. Sorry, Patrick, go ahead.
I was saying there's a deleted scene apparently that shows the meeting he had with her immediately after the husband died, where they basically make the deal.
Yeah,
where she's working for him. And I think that might have been something nice to see as well, because we would have seen, again, Kingpin not when his power is being undermined.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to something else you said, Alan, in terms of, the way in which that it's, I think you said it sort of plods through or something like that.
I thought the plot was a little plodding, yes.
And I think part of that is that's kind of mirroring Clint Barton / Hawkeye in the series, that he's basically having to plod through, any number of things, the situation that he finds himself in, that the whole idea of him being kind of hailed as a hero, which he clearly is very uncomfortable with.
We'll talk about that later.
There's the ways in which I think the plotting nature of the narrative might in some ways mirror kind of he's literally walking around with his backpack having to go and clean things up most of the entire series, to the point where, the series seems to end with him basically in retirement. So in some ways, I think the plotting nature of the story, I think in some ways mirrors at least his character arc.
I think it's a happy thought that the creators at Disney Plus were really going for that kind of artistic reflection. But the plot just felt a little paint by number to me. I felt like there could have been more to dig into. Now, I have nice things to say about
possibly.
the show, too. Just let me know when you want to hear my nice things.
I'm pretty sure the nice things all involve Haley Steinfeld.
She's great, although she was very good in this, I think. Yeah. No, she was good, but can I tell you my favorite part of the whole thing? Is it a movie about Hawkeye, your favorite hero, was focused on the one activity that I know you did as a kid, but you always deny.
I do not LARP. I knew you were going to bring up the LARPers.
How can you not
that
LARP?
About you? There is no way that you have not LARPed in your universe. And
I do.
And now
I have never LARPed in my life.
I feel like
why not?
I feel like the creators of Hawkeye making LARPing so central is just the universe smiling on me, right? That we get to talk about your favorite Hawkeye with LARPing. I mean, even your favorite hero.
They showed up at
cannot escape LARPing. I love it.
Yeah, the moment they showed up in the episode, I'm like, well, I know what Alan's going to focus on.
You do realize, right?
Like, there is...
Hawkeye cannot win without the LARPers. Like, without LARPing.
They do end up being important to the series.
It all collapses.
Yeah, no.
It just...
Yeah.
Chef's kiss. It was so good.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure you appreciated the deep cut reference in the LARPers, too.
I'm sure I didn't, but you'll explain it to me now.
Oh, yeah. Well, the character who has Bombshell inscribed on her bag.
Okay.
Oh.
So, Bombshell is one of the villains from the 1983 Hawkeye limited series in the comics, and probably would be fair to say is one of sort of, to the extent that Hawkeye has sort of main or continuing villains, is probably one of the few that he has.
I've never heard of the Bombshell.
Yeah, well, she's part of a group of criminal jugglers called the Death Throes.
That is
criminal jugglers.
That is
yes.
That is well, Rich. Imagine you're writing Hawkeye. You have to create villains that are the same threat level as Hawkeye. So I think
for a man who has a bow and arrow.
Yeah, right. So you got what could we do?
You've got Bombshell. Yeah.
Wasn't there? Did
Bombshell?
Did Hawkeye battle the Hacky Sack gang at some point?
No.
Was it an Alcatraz gang that he had?
Well, he might have, because one of the members of the Death Throes, the team of criminal jugglers, is called Knick-Knack because he literally just juggles a whole bunch of miscellaneous stuff.
Yeah.
So he's like he's like the juggler who's not good enough to have an actual item, but he's still going to take on Hawkeye.
So
I would argue.
So you've got Bombshell.
The Knick-Knack jugglers got the harder job.
Billiard balls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess that's you've got to adapt on the fly there.
Right, it would be harder to juggle the Knick-Knacks.
Bombshell. You've got Knick-Knack. You've got Oddball, who juggles billiard balls, and then you've got his brother Tenpin that juggles
let me guess.
Is it bowling pins?
Ah, damn it.
And then you've got what's the I want to make sure I get the name right.
It would have made more sense for his brother to juggle bowling balls.
Right, exactly.
I want to make sure I get the name of their and their leader, Ringleader, who juggles rings.
Can I ask you a question? If you were going to put together a gang of jugglers, wouldn't you do at least one guy that did like knives or chainsaws or something threatening?
Or guns.
Or would that be
knives and chainsaws? Guns. Knives and chainsaws are among the things that Knick-Knack juggles.
Okay.
Oh, so Knick-Knack just whatever he's like the Green Lantern of jugglers, like whatever you need.
And so would you say he was a little
knives, axes?
Would you say he was a little overpowered for Hawkeye then?
No. Hawkeye routinely defeated the Death Throes.
Patrick, I have a question for you.
How did he take them on?
Yes.
Let's say that I buy that you never LARPed. Let's just pretend that I believe that to be true. But let's
just pretend that you believe the truth.
Yes. If, let's say, you had to LARP, what superhero would you LARP as? Hawkeye?
More than likely, yes.
All right, what about among fantasy characters? I'm going to guess Aragorn.
Well, it depends.
Legolas?
Am I LARPing as a child? Because I was not big into Lord of the Rings as a child.
Well, how about childish Patrick and then adult Patrick?
It would probably... I appreciate that there's a distinction.
Thank you.
I mean, childish Patrick would probably just be possibly a generic archer.
Okay.
Of some kind. Childish
Patrick, if I got you a Nerf bow and arrow set.
I liked archers.
That's a brave thing for you to admit.
So,
what about as an adult?
Oh, it would definitely be Hawkeye.
No, among fantasy characters.
So still a generic archer.
Oh, fantasy characters. Oh, boy.
That was good, Rich, by the way. Still generic.
I'm ignoring that comment.
That one landed pretty well, actually. That was a haymaker right there.
That's great. I'm gonna juggle a chainsaw at Rich.
Okay, sure.
I would, as an adult, I would not LARP because I do not LARP. Therefore, I reject the premise of your question.
Okay, how about what would you LARP as a science fiction character?
Probably Luke Skywalker.
Okay, and finally, what would you LARP among characters from American literature?
Ooh. Oh, that's a tough one.
See? Show's all about you.
Yeah. Yeah, but it really shouldn't be about me. It should be about Hawkeye.
I know.
I don't know who I'd LARP as from American literature. That's a tough one.
Oh, see,
Maybe
I thought
Bartleby?
you would... I was going to say Bartleby because you would prefer not to.
Yeah, Bartleby's a pretty easy LARP.
And it works on many levels.
It does. It does indeed.
So anything you'd like to talk about next? I've got a series of questions still.
It's really hard for me to narrow down what I want to talk about in the show.
Okay.
Because, I may not be the most objective viewer of Hawkeye.
Are you implying that you couldn't be objective with Hawkeye?
I mean, I can be somewhat objective. I mean, I'd probably give it like a low A, like a 93, if I had to give it a grade.
Well, you're a pretty harsh grader.
But still an A.
Yeah.
So, what would you like to talk about next, Alan?
Well, I was going to start by saying I guess we have to talk about whether this is like Die Hard, and thus either is a Christmas movie or it isn't. Will it be in your regular Christmas viewing? Is. Okay.
Oh yes, this will be part of the Patrick Christmas tradition. We'll be rewatching the Hawkeye series, possibly.
But that doesn't make it a Christmas movie.
But it is a Christmas movie. It's all about him trying to get home for Christmas. What is more of a Christmas movie than trying to get home for Christmas?
If Die Hard is a Christmas movie, then I would say this one would have to be a Christmas show.
Oh, absolutely.
At the very least.
Yes. Because it is a Christmas show.
Well, but I mean, they show enough stuff Christmas-like. Like they go to the ice skating rink and the tree and the whole thing.
There's a lot of Christmas.
It's all about trying to get home for Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, right. The music, if you just play music, I wouldn't say it's a Christmas thing. But I will say they went to stuff.
I did like that when they first mentioned Kingpin, they immediately cut to playing the Grinch song. I thought that was great.
So we could talk about the dog if you wanted to.
Pizza Dog was criminally underused in the show. If I have a critique of Hawkeye, it's that there was not enough Pizza Dog.
Well, I think we're going to have to argue about this one because I don't know if you know this or not, but I am generally not a fan of dogs or animals.
What?
As co-stars in any kind of show. Not interested.
I take a dog over a child actor. Which one's worse?
If it honestly, Rich, if it's a cute dog, probably worse than the kid because it's got two problems. It's a dog and it's just cute. Now I don't. If there's if there's a movie about an animal, I don't want to see it. I just don't want to see it. I have no interest.
Off the bat,
don't want it. So, for me, Patrick, I was happy that the dog didn't overplay his part.
It's actually a female dog.
Oh, the dog took a back seat really quickly. There were some jokes about walking the dog, so they got rid of the dog quickly enough.
Well, they didn't get rid of the dog. He was just kind of there.
Well, the show did.
That's what I mean.
The characters didn't. The show did.
I'm not saying they.
I will say they. It is one of the things. If I have another critique of the series, it's that this was billed as sort of an adaptation of the 2012 Hawkeye series by Matt Fraction and David Aja and others.
Yep. Indeed.
But in terms of like the actual story, the story bears very, very little to no resemblance to that series. What it does is it basically takes aspects of it, like Pizza Dog, it takes the Tracksuit Mafia and things like that, and basically uses them, but within kind of a completely different way. Like the story could not have less to do with the Fraction and Aja Hawkeye. I mean, the closest it gets to adapting it is the car chase. Because there is that scene, but even that's different in that Hawkeye and Kate are actually driving the Challenger, the car that Hawkeye says they're not going to drive because they don't want to wreck it.
Right. So you have some canon
they're
questions.
It's not so much canon so much as, like, you know, I don't know that it was entirely fair to bill this as a adaptation of that version of Hawkeye. It's more of a borrowing some elements that are distinctive within the series, but using them in a completely different story.
Well, the font was very Hawkeye. Hey, but before we move on from the dog, I have a question for you. Because I'm sure you love animals in film.
I do want to talk about the font. Okay, but are we actually going to talk about Hawkeye, or are you going to keep trying to distract us from talking about Hawkeye by bringing up animal movies?
I just want to know, what is your
LARPing?
favorite animal character non-cartoon version? Like, is it Benji or Rin Tin Tin or Lassie or Toto or Beethoven or Yeller or Eddie? Benji?
No, it's the ferrets from Beastmaster.
Oh, you do love those ferrets.
I love the ferrets from Beastmaster.
It's a very weird choice.
Toto and Poto, I think, were their names.
We should do a retrospective on Beastmaster at some point.
We should. We've talked about that. So,
what is Beastmaster?
Oh, Rich, you have so much to learn.
It's just one of the one of the greatest fantasy movies of the 80s.
Oh, good.
So
that
good.
Time.
All right, so we'll move on, Patrick, because you want to talk about the show. Should I know a lot about Echo? Because I don't.
Not particularly. I mean, I think they covered her pretty well in the series. I mean, essentially, she, you know, her origin. She's pretty close to the comic book version in that her father worked for Kingpin. Kingpin had her father killed. Kingpin does end up raising her, and so she does kind of come to see him as a father figure. He eventually convinces her that Daredevil killed her father, and so she goes after Daredevil. She eventually learns the truth, and you know, in the comics we get the same confrontation at the end where she shoots Kingpin. In the comics, it's later revealed that she didn't kill him, she just blinded him. So the probably the one major difference in the Hawkeye version is the comic book version is deaf, but she doesn't have the prosthetic limb. That's something that's completely original to the series, and it's probably more a product of the actor they cast, who is deaf and has the prosthetic limb.
Are you excited for an Echo series?
I'm curious to see where, there's not a lot of Echo material, so I'll be curious to see where it goes. Particularly, I mean, she shows up in Daredevil, she shows up in New Avengers, she actually takes on the Ronin identity in New Avengers. I mean, she currently has the Phoenix Force in her, which I don't think they're going to be bringing in anytime soon.
One would suppose not.
Into her. Oh, and I would say the other major difference, and I guess they kind of allude to this, is that she in the comics has the same abilities as Taskmaster, in that she can perfectly mimic what someone else can do just by watching it.
Got it. Well, maybe it'll be okay then.
So I'll be curious to see it. I mean, I liked what we saw of her in the series, particularly in the episode after she first appears at the end, where we kind of get her origin and background. I thought they did a really nice job with her. It's interesting that apparently this is the actor playing Echo. This was her very first job.
Oh, wow. Good for her.
Yeah. Like, she was cast as Echo, and now she's starring in a Disney Plus series, and those are literally her first acting credits.
Impressive. She was
so
good.
She's so, but yeah, I don't know that there's much. So yeah, I mean, her, I mean, she's basically transplanted, from Daredevil to Hawkeye, but other than that, I think the general, parts of her narrative are pretty consistent with what was originally done in the comics.
Okay, that's a good update. Do you want a serious
and I
question?
Thought,
yeah.
That wasn't a serious question? I thought that was a serious question.
Well, no, I now have a serious question and a somewhat less serious question to ask you.
Let's do less serious, because we did a serious question just now.
Okay. What is up with monogrammed butterscotch?
Yeah, that was weird.
Did you... Wait,
I guess that was...
Is Jack Duquesne somebody I should know from the comics?
Oh, he's the original swordsman.
Oh,
that's the civilian identity of the original.
That's
the actual name of the original swordsman, the one that in the comics allegedly trained Hawkeye.
Got it.
So yeah, that's the significance of his name, is that he is a version of the swordsman.
Got it.
Who of course was a villain in the comics, and
right.
Jack, he seems to be privileged. He seems to be a little bit of kind of Eurotrash, but he doesn't seem to be particularly evil.
No, and I suppose that's one of those Easter eggs that they're toying with fans with. Which I thought was fine, but did it seem odd to you? As like a small complaint about the writing. Did it seem odd to you at the end that the highly armed tracksuits, all of whom had guns and were shooting at people, the guys that chose to go after him only had swords?
I mean, it was very convenient for him. Otherwise, he'd be in a lot of trouble.
I don't think they had swords. I think they had bats. I don't think they had swords.
Thank you, Patrick.
Not guns.
All of a sudden, this heavily armed tracksuit mafia, all of whom are loaded to the gills with guns, none of them go after the swordsman with a gun. Only the bat guys do.
We could say that for the whole show, really. Is that there was a lot of times where they very conveniently either forgot or didn't know how to use the guns on people that had just swords.
To be fair, at the beginning of the big ice skate, ice skate showdown, Hawkeye uses the magnetic arrow to take all of those tracksuits' guns away from them.
But the tracksuits that are fighting Jack,
it took,
are coming out of the building.
Yeah. And they didn't have backup guns, like a pistol or something.
They've not disarmed.
Well, it is established that the tracksuits are kind of idiots.
So, to be clear, you're going to defend this no matter what. Even the obvious plot holes are not plot holes.
Possibly.
All right.
And it also becomes weird, too, because, again, Hawkeye's been in Avenger films where there are people with guns that they have him just fighting. So it makes it even a little weirder when in this show it's like, oh, we don't know how to do that, so we're just going to make everyone lose their weapons.
Yeah. It's just the trick arrow thing gets a little old after a while. But before we move on to trick arrows...
I love the trick arrows.
I know you do. We all agree that butterscotch is disgusting, right?
As a candy, yeah.
Yeah, butterscotch
as a kid, I really liked it, and I don't know why. But yes,
I think because adults had it all the time.
Yeah, butterscotch is an elderly candy. It's like for really old people.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
It is,
right.
Yes.
Just so we agreed.
Yeah, no, agreed. That is a show agreement, I think.
Wow, that's a rarity.
Right?
3 for 3 anti-butterscotch. So maybe we could talk about that, because when I think of butterscotch, you know what I think of? Trauma. So maybe we could talk about Clint's trauma and the way in which the show kind of works through his trauma and provides a resolution of sorts, or at least, like Patrick said, a retirement.
Sure. Yep. I'm good to talk about that. That seems to be by and large, I think, the bulk of his character arc is, kind of dealing with, the trauma or kind of the burden that he sort of feels, that clearly he's struggling with, the death of Natasha and the guilt he feels over that.
As he's should.
Struggling with kind of, he's struggling with the whole idea of, he's someone who is not a hero. He describes himself as a weapon. He's a killer. He's a murderer. That was, sort of
he is
what he was trained to be. And yet everyone sees him as a hero. Everyone, wants to buy him dinner. Everyone's thanking him. People want his autographs.
Right.
that he's very much clearly struggling with that sort of burden.
No, that was pretty heavy-handedly presented for sure. I'm kind of curious how you feel about the resolution of that. Clint walking off into the sunset with his family, Clint moving into retirement. Do you think the show means to show any kind of redemption? Or do you think the show means to show only kind of, a problem that can't be solved for Clint?
I'd probably go more the latter.
Yeah, it seems like they're not really.
I don't know that.
it.
I mean, I don't know that he's redeemed. It's never. I mean, Kate tries to convince him several times that he's more than just the weapon he sees himself as. But I don't know that in the series I really see Clint ever accepting that. I think Clint knows who he is and who he's not.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy with the kind of retirement at the end and because really there's only two ways to resolve that: is he either retires or you kill him. And so I like the retirement.
I agree with that.
I like I like that he gets to go back with the family, particularly with the revelation about who Linda is at the end of the series. Laura, not Linda.
Right.
The revelation of who Laura is at the end of the series.
They've both done their dirty
So yeah,
work.
I was perfect. Yeah, I mean, and they both know who and what they are and have no real illusions about that.
Yeah,
I guess
my disappointment.
It'd be nice if they had going back to therapy or something afterwards. Yeah. Some implication.
Well, but it's worse than that, I think, Rich, because at the end, Clint kind of teaches Maya, Echo, a lesson, right? He says we're both just weapons that other people aim. And then he tells her that Kazi is the guy, that led to her dad's murder. So it just makes Clint at that point the guy pointing the weapon, right?
Yeah, he's not helping her.
I don't think he tells her Kazi. He just says there was a mole that gave him the information. He doesn't explicitly identify it as Kazi.
But we all know who it is, right? And she knows who it is. I think that's...
Well, yeah, we know who it is, and she knows who it is. I don't know that Clint necessarily knows who it is.
I thought he implied very... I remember
I think so.
After he talked to her,
think so.
Went,
and even if he didn't, he had to have known that she would know. He's literally continuing to do to her the harm that's been inflicted upon her and him. Now, maybe people who have been harmed like Clint will behave in ways like that. But I thought it was...
Now, see, I would read it differently in that he's letting her giving her the information and letting her make the choice of what she wants to do. And it's interesting that Echo's intent is never to kill Kazi. She wants Kazi to leave Kingpin with her. She says that very explicitly, that I want to leave, I want us both to leave Kingpin.
And then what does she go do?
Kazi's the one who refuses. Well, I mean, he tries to stab her with an arrow and she turns it back on himself. I mean, that's self-defense.
And then what does she do?
It's convenient.
She shoots Kingpin. Kingpin, right? So she's been turned into that weapon. And Clint at a minimum ought to know that's what happens to people who are weapons. Well, I know because
he's given her information and said,
it's because
he's letting her make her own choices.
You got to have a little distance, man.
I do have a little distance. Well, but see, you hate Clint, and so you don't have distance either.
I don't really hate Clint. I'm just pointing out the obvious.
Yeah. No, he doesn't put her on. He doesn't, deliberately give her information that is going to cause her to kill anyone. He gives her information and says, you can be more than a weapon, and in the end, she chooses to be more than a weapon, as regards Kazi at least
by being a weapon.
Yeah, I think that that's probably what Clint tells himself to sleep at night. But I think the reality is something quite different. And it makes a better ending because it means Clint isn't reformed. What the show wants you to have is it's okay for Clint because he's going to wrestle with his demons in his retirement. You know, like that's the easy out that he's just going to wrestle with it. Like, let him be who he is, a guy that's always going to make the hard call that needs to be made to wrap up, you know, or to, you know, tie off the loose ends that need tied off.
But is that what he's really wrestling with in the series? Or is he more wrestling with the fact that the public perceives him as something very different than what he knows himself to be?
Well, then he's wrestling with the wrong thing, dude.
Well, no, I mean, if he's very consciously aware of what he is,
then that's what he should be wrestling with. This whole martyr thing, like, oh, people treat me like a hero, but I'm not a hero. You know, like, that's pat yourself on the back, feel good liberalism. Like, go do something about it.
He knows he's a monster.
Oh, yeah, right. So let him be a monster at the end, then. Why is it so important that he not be a monster? He sends Maya off as a weapon. He's a monster. That's an ending. He doesn't
send Maya off as a weapon. He sends Maya off, giving her the choice to be or not to be a weapon.
That's like sending somebody off with a loaded gun, hoping they don't use it.
Right. Anyway,
he's giving her. He's empowering her to make her own choices.
Isn't that what they said in the Red Room too? I'm sure that's what we all say when we send people off to.
No, they don't. They literally brainwashed people in the Red Room.
Yeah, but to do things better and right, you know. So we should move on. We're never going to agree.
There was no illusion that the Red Room was doing anything right.
The Red Room is obviously hyperbole about what's going on here, but people who do terrible things always tell themselves that they're not doing terrible things, and we should just acknowledge that he's doing.
Hawkeye does tell himself he's doing terrible things.
Then he should admit it about Maya. Things. Okay, then admit it about Maya. Exactly.
Admit what about Maya? He didn't do anything to Maya.
He's doing a terrible thing.
I disagree.
He's
giving her the truth.
Yes, the truth that will point her in a particular direction. So, let's talk about something we will agree on. It was great to see Yelena back, right? Black Widow number 2.
I do not agree with that.
Oh no, why not?
I'm kidding. Of course, I agree with that. She was great.
Yeah. Pugh is the best thing in the movie or in the series.
Well, Pugh and Steinfeld together.
Their chemistry is, to me, it was better than the Clint-Kate chemistry. And the Clint-Kate chemistry was good, but like when it was Steinfeld and Pugh together on screen, it was really, really good. It was really good.
Yep. No. Yeah. The conversation they have over macaroni and then the elevator conversation was just, those were high points of the series.
Yeah.
You know,
the fight
I really
between
want to
the two
see
of them.
Hawkeye and I want to see a Hawkeye and Black Widow series featuring the two of them. Like that's what I want next.
It's like wanting to see the Falcon Winter Soldier Buddy Road picture back in the day. Coming out of the Avengers,
or Venom and Eddie Brock just odd coupling.
Yeah, it would be
in their apartment for an entire movie.
They were really great.
Yeah. No, Florence Pugh and Haley Steinfeld, just even if they're literally just talking to each other over macaroni for the entire movie.
Yep,
I am fine with that.
I agree. It was really good. What I know we're going to run out of time. What was your take on the presentation of the tracksuits?
Oh, they're exactly how they were in the comic. They're pretty. I guess bumbling would be a word to describe them.
They're funny. They were very, very funny bros.
Yeah. And that's how they talk in the comic too. Their dialogue and the way they speak is exactly how they are in the comic.
Yeah. So, you mentioned earlier, I wanted to mention the trick arrows. You were a big fan?
Love trick arrows.
Yeah. I was really hoping for a boxing glove arrow.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that would have been a nice bit. They did at least reference the boomerang arrow.
Right.
Well, for Hawkeye, because that boomerang arrow conversation is also something that's in the Fraction Aja series. The difference is it's flipped. Hawkeye's the one that's defending the boomerang arrow. Kate is the one in the comic that thinks a boomerang arrow is a stupid idea.
Oh, can I ask you a question about the boxing glove arrow? In my mind, that's more of a Green Arrow. Am I wrong?
Yes. No, sorry. No, I agree with you. Yes, that's more of a Green Arrow.
Good,
You are correct.
Good. I tend to associate that more. DC was always a little more comic-ish, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know that Hawkeye actually has a boxing glove arrow.
It might just be a Green Arrow thing.
Yeah. All right. They did do a collapsible bow joke, which I liked a lot.
Well, of course. Well, you are always a fan of the collapsible bow.
Nothing better than that action pose. Good stuff.
Yeah. Though I don't think does he ever do that actual move in the series?
He does at one point.
In
okay.
The second episode, like pretty early on, actually, I think.
I guess you've blocked that out for some reason.
I'm pretty sure I remembered seeing it, but having watched the series, I think 6 times at this point.
Oh God.
No
or maybe
way.
Just 5.
There's no way.
Oh yeah.
What is there to see after the first time?
Because I watched every episode as it was released.
Yeah.
I watched
and then you stopped.
I watched every episode a second time the day it was released. Pretty sure I rewatched all of the series before the final episode. And then I'm pretty sure I've watched the entire series twice since it ended.
Wow, that is an insane level of fandom.
I really like the series.
Were you happy that Huey Lewis got name dropped in it?
I'm trying to remember the Huey Lewis reference. I vaguely recall it, but I don't. Yeah. It was not something that really grabbed me.
Huey Lewis was terrible, right? You were not a fan. You were a fan?
I did like the Huey Lewis.
Really? Were you hip to be square?
That was not one of my favorite Huey Lewis songs.
So what is your favorite Huey Lewis song?
I don't know that I have a favorite. They all kind of blend together.
That is true.
Maybe Do You Believe in Love? That was a good one.
I'd forgotten about that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I do have something else that we might want to talk about.
Yeah, please.
The portrayal of disability.
Yeah.
With the deafness.
In the series. The deafness and also the prosthetic limb.
Oh, that's right.
That Echo has. Like, there's a lot of representation of disability in Hawkeye.
Right, and Hawkeye himself, too, right? Who is carrying the burdens of too much battle over the course of his lifetime. And it's weird,
because the Hawkeye aspect sometimes is played almost a bit for laughs, like when he turns down the hearing aid so he can't hear Kate.
Right, yeah.
At some points, but otherwise, like, it seems like okay representation.
Yeah, well, the way in which Maya kind of lectures him on being who he really is. But you know what struck me as weird, and this is a very small point, and it's going to sound like to Patrick like I'm really critical, but I don't mean to be. But there's one point where Clint goes to the Avengers Memorial.
Uh-huh.
And he takes his hearing aid out. And it just seems like I understand.
Turns it off, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't want. He wants to be alone in the moment, but he's also got like all of these bad guys chasing him. It seems like bad tactical decision on a Black Ops guy's part.
Or not even bad guys. He's got a Black Widow assassin that he knows is after him at that point.
Yeah, there's all kinds.
Right. Had he done that like in the first day,
and could take him out very easily at that moment. Yeah, I noticed that too. I'm like, I'm not sure I'm turning off one of my main senses that I use to protect myself in that moment.
What if the show just ended then with her coming up behind him and like stabbing him, and it's over?
Yeah.
And it's it's no sound. It's just completely quiet. It just goes to black.
Yeah, that would be.
It also is a weird moment too, because can I get that he wants to be alone in the moment?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
But literally, it means that he's standing there talking to the memorial without any real sense of how loud he may or may not be being, as a ton of people are walking by him.
Yeah. That also would have been a funny scene.
It is kind of...
If he was just, like, screaming
like, or someone walked by, is like, I'm pretty sure that dude's going to kill someone.
Yeah. It should have been me, Natasha.
He's a danger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also liked... I liked the way in which, there were different kinds of disability, that Clint... is as he says, he's hard of hearing, not deaf. Echo's
Right.
deaf. That she has the prosthetic limb. I also liked that you know, we don't really get, like, for Echo, we don't know how she lost her leg. We don't know how, why is she
Right.
deaf? That they didn't really kind of fetishize it with kind of an origin story. It's just a fact of who she is.
Right.
That interestingly enough, I was looking up information on the actor who plays Echo, and she as well has not publicly disclosed how she lost her leg.
Well, I hope
and
they
I'm
get
wondering
that
if that
right.
was something.
Yeah, I hope they get that right in the Echo series then, because one of the dangers of the Echo series will be turning it into a fetish instead of just a natural part of the character.
Yeah,
But
and I like
I
the way
agree.
that the way in which that she very much, as you said, in the conversation with Clint, where she talks about how, he'd be better off not relying on the technology, and then we
Right.
even sort of see the ways in which she uses her prosthetic limb as a weapon, very effectively. Like the way in which that she seems to find, or she's represented as sort of finding a kind of strength in how she is differently abled. I thought was another nice thing that the series did.
Right. I mean, I guess all we know that she was deaf from childhood, right? Because we do see her as a kid.
Yeah, I mean
But
that's the best guess we have, is that she was born deaf. But again, we don't actually know that, but that does seem to be the implication.
That it can be
And
part of a
I
character.
think that's true of Echo in the comics.
Yeah, but that it can be part of a character without having to be the focus of the character or the origin of the character is, I think, is a
Exactly.
good thing.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, well, and particularly in a genre that is notorious for sort of over-explaining everything. I think the classic example, I think, is the Jeff Johns Flash Reborn series, where they I guess I haven't read it, but apparently they dedicated part of the series to explaining the origin of Barry Allen's bow tie. And I'm like, I don't really need that origin.
That's a deep dive we don't need.
Yeah, so I liked that it's just a part of her character that her character makes use of in the series. So I thought,
But then it can be a part of her character without it having to be explained.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And having to be like a fetishized aspect of her character.
Right. Because the explanation almost always fetishizes, it turns out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like it's
So
hard to do
I thought
that well.
was something
I agree.
it did well.
I agree.
And even I enjoyed kind of the kind of on a meta level when Kate asks, how Clint is hard of hearing, and then we get the retrospective of kind of all the things that Clint has physically been through.
Right.
I thought it was kind of nice. Like, yes, Clint is a fairly ordinarily powered human being who has been through a lot of physical abuse over the years.
Yeah.
That it's nice to see that actually taking a kind of toll.
Right. In that way, it's a little bit Netflixian. The Netflix always seem to focus more on the toll than, say, the straight up MCU. But speaking of him that way, gets me to one of the fair or foul, and we don't have a ton of time left. But Matt Purslow from IGN referred to Hawkeye as the dullest Avenger.
Oh, that's hurtful.
Well, do you think it? Well,
But true.
I think he might be mistaking power set for interesting. Or do
so
you
can't
think
do any like laser beams or whatever?
Right, like I mean, Thor is just obviously so much superior as a superhero in terms of power. But then I thought,
so much
is
more
that true?
effective.
Or like maybe Hawkeye wasn't well enough developed in the MCU until now.
Well, I think it also depends, because I would say prior to Thor Ragnarok, I don't know that Thor was all that interesting
Right.
of a character, and then you got the right sort of vehicle for Thor in Ragnarok, and then carried on into Infinity War and Endgame, and he became a much more interesting character.
Right. It's not to say Clinton didn't do things that mattered for the Avengers, but he was never really a focal point like Cap or Iron Man or Thor.
Yeah, I mean, I think the closest he came to being a focal point was in Age of Ultron, when he's the one that sort of,
Kills Quicksilver?
I knew that was coming up.
Allows Quicksilver to die. I meant more that
people. He's the one that like the team relies on. He's the one that convinces Scarlet Witch to sort of be an Avenger. That he's kind of the heart and soul of the team. But of course, for you, the moment I bring up Age of Ultron, it just brings up Quicksilver.
Well, how do you ignore that? But I guess some of us do.
I don't know. How do you ignore that? Because I've been trying for about 5 years on this podcast, and yet it keeps coming up for some reason.
Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, the body count is much bigger than just Quicksilver, so it's a odd choice on my part.
Mm-hmm.
So that's run through most of my notes. I don't know if you have anything else, Patrick, you'd like to discuss?
Well, I did, as I mentioned before, I did like the revelation about Laura being S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent 19, which of course was the designation of Mockingbird in the comics. And so, particularly for me, for someone who, the Hawkeye limited series in which Mockingbird and Hawkeye at the end get married, I hated the fact of how Englehart broke up the marriage in West Coast Avengers.
Yeah.
And basically how, so I was very happy to see that in the MCU, there is a universe in which Hawkeye and Mockingbird remain together, as a couple. So that was something I really liked.
Was there a Mockingbird character in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Yes.
And so
there was I don't know if they ever call her Mockingbird, but there's a Bobby Morse, which is the civilian name, yeah.
All right, so we've seen kind of Easter eggy Mockingbirds before, but this will be the real one.
That's one of the things. Apparently Hawkeye has upset some of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s fan because they feel that this is further kind of decanonized Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, which is too bad because those life model decoys were
yeah, well, I mean, it's
good.
We can just assume that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. exists in its own corner of the multiverse.
That's right.
So, but yeah, I did like that because I hate the Hawkeye Mockingbird divorce.
Yeah.
In the comics and the way they've continued that to this day, it's one of the things I really hate. So,
yeah,
I was happy to see the MCU kind of fix that for me.
Well, that is a win for you then.
Yeah.
As the whole show was. This was, if there was ever peak Patrick superhero, we have now experienced it.
I think we have. Yeah. I mean, I'm
downhill.
not sure. It really is because for the longest time I was like, I just want to make sure I live long enough to get to Avengers, and then it was I hope I live long enough to get through Infinity War and Endgame, and now it's like, okay, I need to stay alive until Hawkeye. Which particularly in the last couple of years has been, a dicier and dicier prospect because of everything going on. And now it's kind of like, I don't know what else there is for me.
You say you're literally saying you have nothing left to live for.
In terms of the MCU,
yes,
it is possible that I am now at the point where, in terms of me personally, I might be past peak superhero.
But you're still going to watch the stuff. Let's be honest.
I will still watch it.
Let's not get crazy here.
I don't know if it's ever going to have the same. I kind of feel like, it has perhaps peaked for me.
Wow. You've finally come around to my side of the street.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'm saying it's peaked for me, but that's just because of my particular predilections in terms of superhero stuff.
Well, I'm happy for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you'll get your, peak, moment. I'm not sure what you're most looking forward to next.
Yeah, I don't know. My peak moment might have come a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, you might be looking. I mean, whatever the MCU does with the X-Men might.
Fantastic Four,
I don't
maybe.
know. But they're like,
no one cares about the Fantastic Four.
Well, we should do the Jessica Alba Fantastic Four movies at some point. That's
those
idea.
movies. Oh, we probably should. Oh, those movies are so bad.
Oh, they're terrible. just terrible.
They're just not good. They're so like early superhero films.
Remember, like, there was once a time when people made superhero films and they were just uniformly not very good.
Yes.
The Dark Ages.
Exactly.
I do. And to be fair, that was a condition that persisted for a very, very, very long time.
It really persists. Well, I guess maybe you could say the Keaton Batman. Or maybe the Reeves Superman.
There were specific outliers, but otherwise...
Well, it depends. The first Reeves Superman, and to some extent the second, but the third and the fourth Reeves Superman were not good.
Yeah. And the Batman...
the one with Richard Pryor, and then the one with Nuclear Man. The first Keaton movie
stuff.
was really
good. You didn't like Nuclear Man?
The second Keaton was pretty good, but the other Batman after that in that kind of Burton verse were not good.
Yeah, I never saw the Clooney Batman. That's one I need to catch up on.
You don't?
No, it's
Clooney,
not. No, it's not.
Here's what I would say. Clooney is a very good Bruce Wayne. He's a terrible Batman.
It's a shame they didn't get another actor for Batman.
Yeah,
it does not surprise me entirely.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. We should talk about that because I've got a great story about the Batman and Robin.
Well, maybe when the Pattinson version of The Batman comes out, we could do a Batman retrospective instead of wasting a full hour on that film.
I forgot to mention, they came out with the official runtime of the new Batman movie. Do you know how long it is?
It's just short of 3 hours, right?
It is 2 hours and 55 minutes.
Yeah.
Why don't they just add on 6 more minutes and make it a solid 3?
Just brutal.
Well, because that would make it a solid 3:01 if they added 6 minutes. So.
No, you said 54.
55.
55. Okay.
It's 2:55. Yeah,
just tack on 5 minutes of credits. I don't know.
I'm not sure I need 3 hours of that movie. I'm not sure I'm up to seeing 3 hours of that movie.
At our age, it might not be doable.
Because even Spider-Man was 2.5.
Yes, superhero movies are getting too long.
100%.
I love
100%.
No Way Home was great. I would say, it was 2.5 hours.
I would say movies in general are getting too long. Like, we seem to be losing the ability to actually do a movie in 2 hours.
It used to be 90 minutes, right?
It's not like they're trying to justify it. Yeah, 90 minutes.
It used to be 90 minutes, You go watch The Breakfast Club, you're done in 88 minutes or whatever.
Back in my day, movies were an hour and a half. Get your long movies off my lawn.